So today I want to bring you another smartphone review. This is the ASUS ROG or Republic of Gamers 7th generation. This is a smartphone basically made for gamers with an interesting, powerful CPU, and in fact the most powerful implementation of the latest Snapdragon CPU that we have on the market. And it comes, or at least this version comes with 12 gigabytes of RAM and 256 gigabytes of storage. So this is one of the most baseline versions of this smartphone that exists on the market. This one is priced at about 1,200 euros at the moment of making this video review. You may be able to find it for cheaper, but at least in Europe and in Romania, this is the baseline pricing for this version. We have Android 13 running on it. We have the best, or at least the fastest display that we've seen on a smartphone, and I'll explain in just a few minutes why it is not the best display. It runs at 165 Hz, so it has one of the fastest refresh rates. It also has an extremely quick, and you can actually feel that, input, a 6,000 milliamperes battery. So this is the largest battery that I know in a modern smartphone. There were some older smartphones that had a larger battery. Of course, this one also should have the best stereo speakers found in a smartphone out there. It has a symmetrical dual front facing speakers, with each one of them has its own amplifier, and they run in stereo. So theoretically, this would be the dream smartphone, right? Like, at least for media, this is supposed to be it. Now let's see if it is the dream smartphone. Starting with the shape and with the design, because this is the first thing you will see. It is an interesting smartphone. It has very rounded edges, so it is theoretically very comfortable to use. You also have two USB Type-C ports. You have one on the side, which is stronger, and we have one on the bottom, which is weaker in USB speeds for file transfer, but it also seems to be a bit slower in charging. We also have one 3.5mm single-ended headphone jack, and I have to say this is why I'm reviewing it, at least for this one, because I will not be keeping this one. I have decided, after using it for about a month and a half, and after testing a Samsung S23 Ultra, to replace this one with the Samsung. You can actually see them side by side here. They look pretty comparable, like both of them are smartphones, and both of them are like a piece of glass with some metal and with a CPU inside, and they do stuff, crazy stuff. Now, the ASUS ROG phone, it has a headphone jack. The headphone jack quality is actually better than most entry-level and even some mid-range DAPs. This one has an extreme amount of driving power. The sound is incredibly vivid, dynamic, powerful, punchy. I could be able to use this as my standalone DAP for eternity. It is so strong that it can easily drive Meze 109 Pro. It can drive all of my IEMs. It doesn't have any kind of hissing. So the headphone jack quality is superb. We are here at Audiophile Heaven, so yeah, the audio quality is just insane. The speaker quality is also insane. This is the first smartphone that actually has some kind of bass. The bass doesn't go that low, so you can imagine like 100 Hz or 80 Hz, but it is super nice in quality. Like, such a great quality from a smartphone. It is superb in every single aspect of the quality. The shape, well, I was happy about the shape before testing the Samsung S23 Ultra, but the shape doesn't feel that premium. So although it has all of those features, although it is pretty great, it has multiple microphones. It has better audio recording quality than Motorola Edge 40 Pro had, and they all have the same CPU. So we are not comparing different smartphones, we are comparing only flagships here with a very similar price point and with the same CPU. Now, this one has much better call quality, it gets louder, and it sounds much better than the Motorola Edge 40 Pro. It actually sounds better than the Samsung S23 Ultra. It is much better in the overall clarity, the speakers, the microphone quality, everything is just a bit better. We have multiple microphones, one on the side, one on top, and I think one or two at the bottom. So we have quite a few microphones. The audio recording quality is superb. Call quality is superb. This one has the best call quality out of all the smartphones that I tested to date. Even better than the Samsung S23 Ultra. It is much better in the audio quality. The Samsung, on the other hand, has one microphone at the top, no microphones on the sides, and two microphones at the bottom. This one will clearly have a better call recording quality. The signal stability of the Wi-Fi is better on the Samsung S23 Ultra. The S23 Ultra not only gets faster for the Wi-Fi connection and for the general GSM connection, but is more stable. The call quality seems to be more stable. And meanwhile, the ASUS ROG 7 is not quite as stable. Now, let's start with why I am replacing it, because you know, the screen is insanely fast, the audio quality is insane, so I should be keeping it, right? Well, the first and the most obvious reason is the display. Although it is super nice in speed, the display quality is actually worse than the one on the S23 Ultra. The Samsung has much better colors, and the colors on the Asus are actually a bit washed out, while on the Samsung they have a fuller color rendition. And when I first tested the Samsung, it felt really warm, like it had a warm tinge on whites on and everything, but then after using both of them for a while, I have actually been able to tell that the S23 Ultra is better. Also, the display ratio is much better on the S23 Ultra. It is much wider. This one is very tall and very thin in display width, so it is like so tall, and yet you don't have enough space laterally, so there is not quite that much information happening on the ASUS ROG G7, and that started to bother me after a while, because you know, you may be thinking you are getting a smartphone, right? So you are reading some emails, maybe some Messenger, maybe some WhatsApp. Yeah, you may use it for Waze or for navigation, and it being so narrow, you don't have quite that much information laterally, and that is a problem if you are using it. And the second reason I'm replacing it, even though it is much better in audio, is the camera quality. Because, you know, S23 Ultra is pretty great with the camera. This is undoubtedly the best smartphone camera I have ever seen. I have tested it against the iPhone 14 Pro and 13 Pro and 13 Pro Max and all of the iPhones. The S23 Ultra comes out on top easily in camera quality. The ROG G7 doesn't even, I don't know, it doesn't even get close. It doesn't even get in the same ballpark. It's like the ROG G7 is so far behind in camera quality that it came from like 10 years ago. It's so poor. The camera quality is awful. It's like so terrible. And I don't mean just the video quality, it's the photo quality as well. You should be able to see some photos, and just the ROG G7 doesn't have clarity, doesn't have definition in photos, although I do think that it has a better color in photos. Samsung S23 Ultra has very poor color quality. The colors on the S23 Ultra are either too yellow, too warm, and it has some weird tinges, especially if the light isn't perfect. So in low light, the S23 Ultra will pick up on detail and on clarity, but will give everything a very strong yellow tint. And you'll have to import those photos and edit them in afterwards. While the ROG G7 has better color, but the quality is so poor that you can barely understand what is happening on the screen on the ROG G7. It's like the photo quality is not great, like really not great. Both of them have a very weak LED light, so the flashlight is extremely weak on both. You can barely see something in your room if it is dark, but I was able to get some pretty decent front camera photos from the S23 Ultra. Like, I don't know if it is just the processing or if it is both the processing and the camera quality, but the front camera of the Samsung S23 Ultra was able to capture my face in total darkness. Like, there was not a light in the room, just the light coming from the display, and it still captured my face. While the front camera of the ROG G7 doesn't even capture my face in good light. It's so terrible at capturing my face. You know, like, it's bad. It's a pretty bad camera. Face recognition and unlocking both of them with the face works about equally well. Fingerprint sensor works about equally well. The fingerprint sensor is placed a bit weird on the ROG G7 because the screen is so tall and so narrow. You actually have to place your finger much higher than on more smartphones, and you have to get used to that. Now, I will be taking right now a selfie photo with both of them, and I will be pasting it over so that you can see what you can expect from both of them. And although I do keep saying that the S23 Ultra is better, and it is around the same price point for the same configuration, I will have to mention this. S23 Ultra consumes a lot more battery, and we'll get to that in a second. But also, taking a photo with the S23 Ultra means that you have to wait for the photo to get processed. And that can be both annoying and very time consuming, because the photos can get processed in like quarter of an hour, which is insane, like insane. There is so much time being spent on processing the photos with the S23 Ultra. It's not great. We should do a little bit of video testing with the ROG G7. And although this may not seem very important, the camera quality on the ROG G7 is limited to full HD 30 FPS only on the front camera, which is quite poor. You can do much better on the S23 Ultra. The S23 Ultra can do 4K at 30 frames per second, and you may be able to compare to. The focal distance on the S23 Ultra is much wider, so you get more in the picture, which is great for selfie video and for selfie photos. Also on the S23 Ultra you get autofocus, while you don't get that on the ROG 7. So some things to take into account when you are on the S23 Ultra. You also get much better video quality on the front camera, but also on the back camera. The front camera of the ROG 7 I think is not usable for most people, so this is the kind of quality you can expect to get. Not great. I mean, it's pretty terrible. It's not the kind of thing where you say not great, not terrible. It is not great, it is actually quite terrible. So I wouldn't use this video for anything, like for a trip, for nothing. It's poor in quality. Also, the ROG 7 doesn't have any kind of video stabilization, so you may be able to see that the video is shaky even if it is standing still, and if you are trying to film anything that is moving, you can't. You basically just can't. It's so shaky. Even on the back camera, the image quality on the ASUS ROG 7 is quite poor. Even if you are filming at 4K, 30 frames per second, you are getting a much worse video quality than on the Samsung S23 Ultra. So this is a direct comparison between Samsung S23 Ultra and ASUS ROG 7, also between the audio of the two. So I think that the image from the Samsung S23 Ultra is much crisper. It also has much better stabilization. So right now we aren't trying to shake either of them off. Both of them are using their built-in medium level stabilization. So some electronic stabilization, and on our Samsung S23 Ultra we also have the optical image stabilization. We have some AC or air conditioner in the car running, so it is quite hot in Romania, about 42 degrees Celsius, quite warm. And the point is that the video quality is quite different. As I was saying in the ASUS ROG 7 review, much different. It is both the quality, the image clarity, but also the image stabilization. So I don't think that the quality of the ROG 7 is useful. Like, I think it is an okay smartphone, but not quite good enough. While the S23 Ultra has video quality up to the level of mini camera. I think that it would be useful like that. You can even see the sensor moving as you are moving your hand on the S23 Ultra, so the optical image stabilization is working as intended. Bine. Vrei să iau? Stai. Poți să vii și tu spre mine? Mulțumesc.
Chiar interesantă comparația asta. Pe model. Culorile sunt din nou între ele două, nu e niciunul accurate. Ok, și așa merge. Că așa se vede și surrounding și...
Da, de bine se adaptează.
Of. Așa, da, e bun asta, să ți se vadă fața că se vede diferența.
So a lot of people may be wondering, what did I say at the beginning? Doesn't this have a better overall CPU performance? It has a better CPU performance. But I really have to tell you something. There is one game, just one game in the entire world that can take advantage of that said performance. And that is Genshin Impact. If you don't play Genshin Impact on either of those phones, you won't care about the better, slightly better CPU performance on the ROG 7. It basically doesn't do anything better if you don't play Genshin Impact. And honestly, I don't play Genshin Impact. Like, I really don't. I may look like it, but I don't do it. So for me, that improvement in the CPU performance is not tangible. It's like a minor improvement. Like S23 Ultra gets not quite that steady 60 frames per second, while the ROG 7 is much steadier in the frames per second, so you get a more fluid motion. I have installed Genshin Impact on both, but it's not worth it. Don't purchase the ROG 7 just to play Genshin Impact, I would say. You need a conclusion, and as a conclusion, as a multimedia smartphone, ROG 7 could have been great. It could have been the best. It could have been like the last smartphone you need. It could have been the absolute best, but it isn't. They just failed to provide the one thing that could have made me keep it. Like, I could have given up on using the S23 Ultra for B-rolls, and I am using this one to take like B-roll shots, some extra photos for reviews. So for me, the camera is a huge bonus, but I likely wouldn't have upgraded because I like the faster response rate of the display on the ROG 7 if the display wasn't so narrow. The display, the aspect ratio of the display is terrible. Like, it's really terrible. Having such a narrow display is annoying because you don't just get a narrower display. That means that every single image that you see on it is minified because it doesn't have the width to expand. So you'll get smaller everything on the ROG 7, like smaller pictures on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter, or X, I think it's called right now. But anyways, you get smaller images, you get smaller content. And for a multimedia smartphone with a huge display, smaller content is not the purpose. So I would say that if they come with an ROG smartphone that doesn't have those issues and still keeps the performance, and if they put in a better camera, really, ASUS, really, you just placed in one of the worst smartphone camera implementations ever. Like, if they do all of those things, they would create a smartphone that I would be able to buy and keep. When it comes to the battery of the ASUS ROG 7, the battery is considerably better than the one on the Samsung S23 Ultra or Motorola Edge 40 Pro. The battery on the ROG 7 is probably the best battery I've seen in a modern smartphone. It has 6000 milliamperes of battery. It can charge both slow and quick, and you can set that from a menu. You can set it to charge slower, you can set it to charge only at some hours. They really took care of the battery, and I have to give it to them. The battery is insanely good. I can get about 2 days of actual usage from it, like 2 days. I don't have to charge it every single day. I don't even have to charge it multiple times a day. Even if I'm filming, even if I'm gaming, it will survive for 8 hours of battery life. That's crazy good. Like, let me tell you, it is so refreshing, and it was refreshing to have such a great battery life. With the S23 Ultra, I have to recharge this after a longer photo shoot. I have to recharge it after I've been using it for a long while. I have to recharge it almost once or twice a day. So I think that the S23 Ultra will degrade in time, but I'm also using it for more than I was using the ROG 7. The ROG 7 wasn't usable for its camera, so you have to take that into account. The battery life was great as a smartphone, but every single bit of my experience was a bit worse. For example, Waze was a bit worse as an experience. I gamed a bit less because I didn't like the aspect ratio of the display and it was too narrow for my eyes. So generally speaking, I think that the battery life of the ROG 7 is great. If you are going to use it as a multimedia smartphone, it will be great. As a transport for a USB DAC/headphone amplifier, it will be awesome. Please keep in mind that ROG 7 doesn't detect every single USB DAC/headphone amplifier out there. So if I am being honest, I think that the S23 Ultra will detect better most DAC/headphone amplifiers, but this one still has a smaller battery. It has 5000 milliamperes of battery versus 6000 milliamperes of battery. So it will be a decision you have to make. Do you want a smartphone that is more of a multimedia thing with an excellent headphone output? And at this price, do you want it to be like more gaming focused? So this more narrow display with a longer aspect ratio is great if you want to see a lot of your game, but if you want to have space for your fingers to sit on. While on the other hand, with the S23 Ultra, it is a more generic smartphone that I think is more plausible to use for most reasons. This one I bought with my own money and I have to return it because I just don't like it that much. Comparing it to the S23 Ultra that I also bought with my own money, I think that the S23 Ultra is better. It is a better smartphone, it has a better quality, and it just feels better in hand. It is wider, you get larger images, you get a better display, although it doesn't have that fast over refresh rate, it just is better. So you really have to ask yourself what is more important. Is the camera an important factor when you are purchasing a smartphone? If yes, then don't get the ROG 7. The camera is disappointing. It's really disappointing. Like, don't buy it. If the camera isn't an important decisional factor, and if the display can be a bit narrower, if you don't mind it, or if you are going to hold it like this. So holding it like this is more comfortable with a more narrow display, and I think that is the main reason they did it. So if you hold it horizontally, you get a better experience. But then again, if you are purchasing it to play games, then you can go for the ROG 7. It is perfect for playing games or for playing Genshin Impact. It is the only game that you get on mobile, at least at this point. You don't get more awesome games. But then again, I wanted a multimedia smartphone, so the ROG 7 is not great. Having such a narrow display means that although it has the best audio that I've seen in a smartphone, like literally the best, it is at DAP quality best, it just doesn't do it for me. The display is so bad that watching videos means that you get huge black bars on the sides. So yeah, at the end of the day, I hope that this video will help you make a decision. I don't care, like literally, I don't care which smartphone you purchase. I just want you to purchase one that is good for you. For me, it makes no difference if you go with the ASUS ROG 7, the S23 Ultra, or something else. What I want you to do is to use my video and my content to make a better decision for yourself. I want you to purchase something that you like, something that you'll enjoy, and something that will be joyful to use for you. I thank you so much for watching. I hope that you've enjoyed this video. Please tell me how to improve my videos. Please, if you have questions, write them in the comments and I may be able to answer them. I may be able to help you even further. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope we'll see each other really soon. Bye bye.